Welcome back. This is Brunch Education Talk now, and we'll be looking at the top breaking news on education this week. And to discuss these issues here, we have Dr. Chris Imafidon. Dr. Chris, you're very welcome to our studios again.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yes, and it's wonderful to have you. Very interesting. Let's look at the new A-star grade that is being awarded in A-levels this year. And it could go 7% of entries, research suggests. And students taking maths or actually languages are the most likely to score rather top marks. Now, why maths or languages?
It's always very interesting, because if you look at maths, it's an exact science. So if you add 2 to 2, you get 4. There are no approximations to it. Because of that certainty, it's very easy for anybody that has already switched on at GCSE level to be able to get full marks at any other level. Because you have the building block, you're almost a super specialist. Why? You have already understood the fundamentals of the subject. And so maths is one subject that is very pyramidal. So if you understand the foundation, you can build on the next level, you can build on the next level, you can build on the next level. So even if you're doing further maths, if you do further maths, the statistics that's available, published every year, 1 in 4 students that do further maths, guess what? Get A star. So why? Because once you get it, and we've said this over and over again in this program, picking up things like maths manual, and knowing that there are 4 operations in maths, and knowing that there is a logic in maths, and understanding the contradictions of the logic solves the entire problem. Because the question I've been asked over and over again, how can a 6-year-old pass GCSE that 16-year-olds are struggling to pass? It's because that foundation was never there. And if you run away from the foundation, it means that you're going to keep having to confront that problem at a higher level, at even intermediate level, at the biggest level, wherever. So confront the fear of numbers and settle it once and for all. And you are literally liberated to be able to tackle any question at any level.
So does that mean that most of our children are beginning to understand the basic of mathematics better and at a faster rate now?
No, it's because there are no gray areas. It's either you are in or out. So it's either white or black. It's either you already understand the concepts and therefore you're very good at it, or you struggle with it and you never know it. Because the people that would do maths at A level already had a passion for maths at GCSE. So GCSE was, if you like, a selecting sieve that sieved out the grey completely out, and they became black and white. So there is no person doing A-level maths that is just doing it because a teacher said or because a friend said. If you're doing it at advanced level, you have absolute certainty that the fundamental concepts are things that you enjoy. So you don't do it because you're asked to do it. You do it because you know the benefit of trying to look at a problem, solving the problem, working through all your way through, and then getting an answer. And then getting the ecstatic feeling that, yes, I got the exact answer. Unlike literature, unlike sociology, unlike psychology, where it's mainly an expression of opinion. Maths is not it's an exact science. So you get it, and you say, yes, I got it, and then you try more, and you try more, and you try more. So it's something that is very clear that you either have it or you don't have it.
So for parents who actually want their children to do very well in mathematics, is actually understanding the basics and the fundamentals, the theorems behind the mathematical expressions.
Yes, and not the math textbook. I keep saying this. If you follow, the math textbook presents concepts as if they are topics, independent topics, without bringing any relationship between them. So for instance, this week we do addition, 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 addition. And the next week we do subtraction, 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 and subtraction. That we haven't been able to tie in the mind of the child that really addition and subtraction are exactly the same. They're looking at the same coins, but 2 different sides. We've not been able to tie in. You do multiplication, for instance. That's why really anybody that wants to really understand this concept is there. If you pick up the 2nd chapter of Maths Manual, you see this very clear. You now do multiplication, multiplication, multiplication. And then the next week you do division, division, division. You have not been able to link the 2 of them to say multiplication is exactly the opposite of division. So because once that child gets that concept right, the child will fly. But until the child is able to connect the 4 operations and understand this, because there's a full understanding of these operations that will take you to any level you want to achieve you want to aspire to achieve.
What about languages?
Okay, languages is a key thing. Now, if you build up the vocabulary, because language has similar patterns to maths. Now, the building block of language are the words. So if you're able to build up the words, and therefore you build up your vocabulary, all you would then need to do is link them up. So you can only call a book a book. And if you want to change that name to any other name, there is no approximation with it. So the expression might give you some flexibility, but the individuals are the same. So if you don't know the building block, for instance, for Mandarin, and you don't know things like Ni Hao, Xie Jian, Xie Xie, there's no way you're going to be able to pick up big aspects of the Chinese. Because you cannot say, for instance, you apply for engineering, you want to do electronic engineering, and when you turn up and say, no, we've closed electronic engineering because of under recruitment, now go and do electrical engineering. When you know that there are salient differences between the two. So now that they have reduced the number of courses, some lecturers will then have to lose their job. But remember, the students will have to lose their places and be merged to other subjects that they may not have a passion for. And that, to me, spells disaster. If you go and do a course you don't have a passion for, because that's the next best thing to do, what will happen is that you will get disinterested at the first hurdle. As the first obstacle you see is, oh, I wasn't thinking of doing this anyway, and then you abandon it. It then leads to attrition. It then leads to frustration with the educational system. So if the lecturers are able to eloquently express the situation of the educational system now, the parents will be up in arms, and the students will be up in arms, not just the lecturers. So I think the public need to be aware of what is at stake when you say you want to slash courses, close down departments. We've closed down some departments in some elite universities, and how are we hoping to compensate for that loss of body of knowledge? Who is going to bring that back to the industry? Who is going to bring that back to business? Who is going to bring that back to invention? Are we going to outsource a particular body of knowledge to a third party when we have children that are interested?
That's quite interesting. Now, still talking about that, let's look at the university budget cut. And the cut is actually 449 million pounds, and it is actually leading to the reduction of student places by 6,000 in the next academic year. Now, since the country is actually cutting and reducing costs in every way, what is actually the implication of this?
It is a lame excuse to say that we are fighting deficit. Right? The government is saying we are in for a period that is harsh and hard. Therefore, we should think of how to cut things. Cut down on this, cut down on waste, cut down on that. And you are now cutting down on the root of prosperity. Because if you cut down on the number of spaces in the university, what you are indirectly saying is that we don't want to develop our youths. If we have an undeveloped mind, a country cannot prosper without an army of educated and skilled young men and women that can advance business, advance industry, and advance economy. So when you now say, it's a big contradiction in terms, and when you now say you want to cut down on the budget deficit and therefore taking over 400 million pounds out of education, it really means that you are cutting your nose to spite your face. How are we thinking in terms of priority when we know that every single second we spend £2,000 on the war in Iraq? Every single second. So it means that if we hold fire for 2.5 days, we'll be able to fund this education for our youths. We need to reorientate our priority. What are we defending? We've spent so much money. We spend £175 billion. That's what we pay every day. That's excluding the human lives. So are we saying we cannot just spend the same amount of money that we spend on the war for 2.5 days so that our young men and women can get the education they rightly deserve? They're not asking for a golden elephant. They're not asking for anything else extraordinary. They're just asking, can I pursue my area of interest? As a father, would you want to do that? Would you want to disable your child from going ahead to pursue his interest, or disable your daughter from pursuing an interest just because you're now fighting a war? I think if we are really honest and sincere about the development of this nation and the development of the next generation and interested in our future, we shouldn't compromise that for a war we know we can't win, a war we know we eventually get into a negotiated settlement. This is not something that is going to be ended on the battlefield. It's going to be ended on the negotiation table. So why waste all these lives, energy and money?
We'll come back to that. Still talking about the cuts now for the universities. One of the options that has been given is the 2 years university degree. Now, what do you think about that? Because of the cuts, actually reducing university degrees to 2 years instead of 3 years, and even paying less fees. Now, we could have your comments on that. You can send comments to brunch@loveworldtv.co.uk. But the start